are watching Platinum Northwest TV News. Good evening and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Philadelphia Mangoeng. Let's take a look at the leading top stories. First up, Cabinet has noted the decline in GDP by 0.3% in the third quarter of 2024, and the Road Accident Fund CEO launches an astonishing tirade against law firm and university professor. In the business news, we take a look at the 12 billion rand blow to major international firm for its role in state capture in South Africa, and in the sports news, Pirates and Sundowns in Champions League action. We begin here. Despite the third quarter gross domestic product decline, Cabinet has welcomed the positive economic outlook by the International Monetary Fund and rating agency Standard & Poor's as the impact of the implemented Operation Vulindlela coordinated reforms have started to bear fruit. This is according to the Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, who briefed the media on the outcomes of the Cabinet meeting held on Wednesday.
On the economy, the quarterly labour force survey of the third quarter of 2024, Cabinet welcomed the positive trend in the country's employment figures, which shows that the number of employed people increased by 294,000 to 16.9 million in the third quarter of 2024, with unemployment rate declining to 32.1% from 33.5% in quarter two. The largest increases in employment were observed in the Eastern Cape with 83,000, Western Cape 75,000, Northwest 69,000, and Mpumalanga 49,000. Importantly, the total number of unemployed youth, that is young people between the ages of 15 and 34, decreased by 171,000 to 4.8 million, while employed youth registered an increase of 66,000 to 5.8 million. Similarly, the number of employed women increased by 97,000 to 7.5 million. The positive employment trend is a result of concerted efforts and interventions which began during the sixth administration through the implementation of the Economic Recovery and Reconstruction Plan, commonly known as the ERRP, which are starting to yield results. Quarter 3 GDP decline in the midst of positive economic outlook. Cabinet noted the decline in GDP by 0.3% in the third quarter of 2024, with the largest decline of 28.8% recorded in the agriculture, forestry and fishing, which may indicate the impact of the drought, as Stats SA is reporting that the decline is primarily due to decreased economic activities for field crops. Despite the third quarter GDP decline, Cabinet welcomed the positive economic outlook by the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the rating agency Standard & Poor's as the impact of the implemented Operation Vulindlela coordinated reforms start to bear fruit. The S&P also upgraded Eskom's long-term global scale foreign and local currency ratings from stable to positive, which indicates the progress made by government in strengthening Eskom's financial and operation foundation through the work of NECOM, Eskom board, and Eskom's executive team. Cabinet further welcomed the decision by the South African Reserve Bank to cut the repo rate by another 25 basis points from 8% to 7.75%. The lower interest rate will continue to ease the burden on highly indebted consumers and mitigate the high cost of living, whilst also encouraging businesses to expand their operations to further stimulate economic activity.
Cabinet has also welcomed the announcement by Saudi Arabia to invest 9.5 billion rand to build a platinum smelter and base metals refinery in the Waterberg in Limpopo.
Cabinet welcomed the announcement by Saudi Arabia to invest 9.5 billion to build a platinum smelter and base metal refinery in the Waterberg of Limpopo. I'm sure the Premier of the province will welcome me home for Christmas with open arms. The new investment is a strong vote of confidence in our nation and builds on the first phase of our investment mobilization drive under the sixth administration that saw our nation surpass its $1 trillion in investment pledges.
With SAA pilots currently on strike, which will affect the holiday season, the executive has commended South African Airways' strong performance, highlighting the airline's significant progress towards financial sustainability.
For the first time since 2012, the South African Airways 2023 financial year and group revenue increased from 2 billion to 5.7 billion. Remarkably, SAA achieved this milestone while operating with only 6 to 8 aircraft across 9 destinations at the beginning of the 2022-23 financial year. The airline has since doubled its fleet, launched intercontinental routes, and increased its network to 16 destinations.
In other news, Road Accident Fund CEO Collins Letswalo has launched a blistering attack on a firm of attorneys and an emeritus professor in the Department of Private Law at the University of Pretoria for being part of a campaign to capture the fund. Letswalo singled out Gardnell of Gardnell Attorneys Incorporated, which only handles road accident fund claims for road accident victims, and Professor Henny Klopper, who's also a legal practitioner at H&B Klopper Attorney in Pretoria, during a media conference. Let's take a look.
Now, over the past period of 5 years, Gardnell attorneys have been paid over 2.2 billion from the road accident fund. So you can go and do, if you know the mathematics of it, 2.4 billion, 25% of it will be, let's say, 550. Yeah. So for 2 billion, we know that a quarter of it is 500 million. So that's what this man made for himself, at least. Now, you are not shocked why. Then this man fights this much. He wants to continue. And you can imagine that part of it has been what we have reduced, because if you look at the numbers before then, they were making much more. So this is a man that has made 2.2 billion, at least 500 million, which was going to the pockets of the Gardnell Incorporated. He's a master of contingency fee agreements. He even prides himself with winning an award for understanding the contingency fee agreements and the way it works. And of course, other indiscretions, including charging us attorney-client costs when it was supposed to be party-party costs, which is something that we are also looking at. But what I'm saying is, once you see Gardnell, think about $500 million he has made in the last 5 years, and ask him that question. So you think it's fair that you run around, fill a few forms, and all you get is 500 million. So this is a millionaire we are talking about, if he's not a multi-billionaire by now. Right. They want to distort history. So he uses Professor Klopper. He introduced me to Professor Klopper, by the way. I listened to Professor Klopper. I used to have very serious, I took the man very seriously. I wrote in one of the articles, I've got a complimentary copy from him called The Law of Third-Party Compensation in South Africa, written by him. But you can imagine, if we change the law, what happens to that book? It becomes obsolete. It becomes obsolete. He has written contradictory things, and I don't know why the media never asks him, why, Prof, you are writing today, you are saying this, the next day you are saying the other. In his own book, the Road Accident Fund is a social benefit scheme. Lately, he has written to say the Road Accident Fund is an insurer. In his own book. So academically, we are told in his book that this is the issue. We doubt he's writing these things himself. The prof, as I'm akin to calling him, is old now. I doubt he's writing these things himself. But when an old man starts contradicting himself, some of us have got old parents, we understand what's going on. it may well be age taking the effects on the prof. And we hope so. Because certainly what he's now spewing is propaganda, or his name is used to spew this propaganda that is about the RAF. Now, you are going to struggle to understand where these guys come from, because every time they say the RAF is an insurer, we ask them, where do you get that from? Nowhere. By the way, editors in these newspapers edit out certain things. I've seen one journalist who came, did some work, and in the beginning of that article says RAF, the social insurance scheme, that what, and I asked her, but where are you getting this from? She says it's an edit, added by the editor, because they want to drive a certain narrative that the RAF is an insurance. It's not. It's a social benefit scheme. It's classified as that by the classifications committee, by the Reserve Bank. The Reserve Bank issues what is called the Institutional Sector Classifications Guide. The most recent one, you can go to the website, is in July this year. We are still a social benefit fund as it is. So you are going to struggle to find all those things. Then they come. You know, there's a very strange thing. If you remember last year, they had a big complaint. Their big complaint was that we made them queue for what is called block settlement. Block settlement is where we go and we try to settle matters. When we came in the RAF, the settlements were sitting at around 51%, and we have grown those settlements, not going to court, to about 82% over the period. And I said, you must remember the 100 matters a day. You must go. When it's now 55 matters a day at the courts, we are still accused of cloaking the courts, right? So you see this in this space where people just tend to say things that are not supported by anything or any evidence. And we are clear that all these things are done to mislead South Africa. The aim is to attack the RAF. And I believe very strongly that the aim is to attack because people know that Collins Letswalo contract ends in August next year. And they think it's about me. It's really not about me. It's about South Africans. And there is a view that people share that the more noise they make, the more intervention will be. People come and say, come and go and intervene at the Road Accident Fund. And the question is, intervene and do what exactly? That we are not doing. Because 120 days, we have targeted 120 days, we've got targets of the backlog. But I think what is also important is what Judge Fisher says in her judgment on the 29th of July, 2024, which tells the truth. From the history long and past, and more recently, it is clear that it cannot be in dispute that the current board, as many of its predecessors, inherited a fund that was insolvent.
In more news, the Mabata Magistrates Court has postponed the case against Mompoloke Buitoko to the 7th of February 2025 for further investigations. Buitoko is charged with corruption and conspiracy. He made his appearance before the same court today and was granted bail set at 20,000 rand. The charges stem from an incident that occurred on the 25th of November near Mahikeng, where the accused offered a SARS official an amount approximately 100,000 for him to release an impounded truck at the border. During proceedings, it was revealed that there was a truck that was detained by South African Revenue Service at Skilspot's Hack border post that had cigarettes worth over 1 million rand. The driver of the truck was apprehended for contravention of Customs and Excise Act 91 of 1964. The alleged truck, cigarettes and trailers was seized. The Botswana policeman allegedly phoned one of the South African South African SARS official to pay him so that the truck can be released. An entrapment was set which resulted in his arrest. In international news, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will travel to South Africa and Lesotho next week. He will hold discussions on global and regional issues with a strong focus on Pretoria's presidency of the G20. Guterres is expected in South Africa next Wednesday, where he will meet with President Cyril Ramaphosa and other senior government officials. Discussions are expected to focus on South Africa's G20 presidency and issues of financing for development and a huge concern for the global South. The SG is expected to underscore South Africa's role at the helm of G20 as a significant opportunity to advance Africa's priorities. On Thursday, Guterres will then head to Lesotho, where he will meet with King Letsie III and Prime Minister Sam Matekane. He intends to demonstrate solidarity within landlocked countries and shed light on the challenges faced by the impacts of climate change. The SG is also expected to visit to the Katse Dam and the Lesotho Highlands Water Project. Let's take a look now at the business news. In the business news, McKinsey & Co. has agreed to pay more than 2.2 billion rand to resolve criminal allegations tied to the corruption scandal involving former leaders of South Africa's ports and rail operator Transnet. The U.S. Justice Department agreed not to proceed with any case against the consulting firm if it engages in no further misconduct for 3.5 years. The agreement resolves both a U.S. investigation and charges brought against McKinsey by South Africa's National Prosecuting Authority. McKinsey issued a statement that it will continue to cooperate with the U.S. and South African authorities and welcomes the resolution of these matters and the closure of this regretful situation. The consulting firm was retained to advise state-owned Transnet on the purchase of 1,064 locomotives, which cost 54 billion rand. The agreement also resolves U.S. and South Africa's investigation into McKinsey's work for another South African state-owned enterprise, the power utility Eskom. And that's all from the business news. Your sports update follows next. In sporting news, this weekend's action in Group C of the Total Energies CAF Champions League promises to be electric as Orlando Pirates face Al Ahly at the Orlando Stadium. Kickoff is at 3 p.m. Now, both teams enter the match level on 3 points after impressive opening game victories. Al Ahly boasts an impressive 16-match unbeaten streak in away games across all competitions, testament to their formidable form. Pirates, however, have been equally dominant at home, winning all Total Energies CAF Champions League qualifiers on their turf this season and scoring 7 first-half goals in the last 6 outings. Asfar Rabat will welcome South African champions Mamelodi Sundowns to starter Ben Ahmed El Abdi. Group leaders Asfar Rabat look to maintain their perfect start against a formidable Mamelodi Sundowns side. Now, the hosts are unbeaten in 21 home matches across all competitions, while the visitors have scored 12 goals in their last 6 matches. The South Africans are primed to test Rabat's formidable defense. Kickoff for that fixture is at 9 p.m. with the stakes high in both fixtures. Group B promises a weekend of drama as all 4 teams vie for pivotal points. In more soccer news, Mamelodi Sundowns have been handed a tricky group for the 2025 FIFA Club Cup set for the United States of America. The expanded edition of the club competition has 32 teams from 6 confederations across the globe, with Sundowns, Al Ahly, Wydad Athletic Club and Esperance the 4 representatives of Africa. With Sundowns in pot 4, the lowest ranked teams in the competition, it was always going to be a tough outcome as they face Brazilian giants Flamengo, Bundesliga club Borussia Dortmund and South Korean champion Ulsan HD. Meanwhile, Rulani Mokoena and Wydad AC were handed an even tougher draw, facing Manchester City, Juventus and Al Ain in Group G. And that's where we're going to have to leave it for this weekend. Thank you so much for watching. Have a blessed one. Till Monday again. Good night and take care.